Astronauts to the moon.
Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1.
Houston, we have a problem.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue.
What you're seeing here is a mirage.
What's going on, everyone? It's Jaron from Jeranism, back with another live video for you today. Thank you so much for joining us. It is Thursday, which means it's time for another, presentation style. I guess you want to call it that. I don't know. We're going to be doing a little bit of space crack today, so get your pipes ready. Let's do some space crack with the doctors in the house, Dr. Rodrigo Ferrari-Nunes. Rodrigo, are you there?
Hello, Jaron.
Good.
Here I am.
Glad you're joining me. So it's exciting. I like doing these Thursday shows. We did a couple in a row already. Kind of a little, what do you want to call it? It is a system going where, people know already that we've got Glowbusters at 12 noon Pacific on Sundays. I've got my Jeranism Raw show on Monday nights at 6 p.m. We've got the Friday Lounge at noon on Fridays. Now we're adding a little Thursday thing at noon. So it's just somewhere for people to go. Busy. But we also have, I saw somebody else said in the chat that, you're going live at the same time as Russian vids. Well, the good thing about that is that there's lots of content out there. So we appreciate you joining us here. But if you want to jump over and watch him and catch this on the flip side, whatever you want to do, we're just here presenting it. And, we did a good Thursday show with Ranty 2 weeks ago. I thought that was a great show. We did one last week with Travis from Life is Short. Next week, I think we're going to try and have Iru doing his...
He's here right, in the chat, and good night to everybody. And
nice.
I was going to say thank you so much for having me, Jaron. It's very nice to be here and be able to talk to you about this work. And
I think it's awesome.
Lots going on.
Yeah, lots going on. Let me just show this page. So this is simply the description of this video that you're watching right now. So if you scroll down, there is a little section talking about Rodrigo. So I'll just read that real quick. Rodrigo Ferrari-Nunes, PhD, is a social and cultural anthropologist with a PhD from the University of Aberdeen in Scotland, a master's in anthropology, and a double bachelor in anthropology and classics from the University of British Columbia in Canada. Also a musician with a number of albums over the years in jazz, samba, bossa nova, music, rock, metal, and pop. He is the creator of a music education and production program, as well as a traditional apprenticeship-inspired method for researching and analyzing current themes with the tools of social sciences, audiovisual production, and music making. He has been a regular panel member on Glowbusters, a speaker at the Amsterdam conference, and a weekly panel member on my Friday Lounge series as well. And then right below that, you'll find a few links. So the first link is to Space Crack Magazine Volume 1. You'll find that right here. Just click that link. You can easily download the first edition, Volume 1, that we're going to be discussing today. The Arius Report, which is a Space Crack supplement, another 35 or so page PDF. Just great work that you've been doing. Below that, we have his Patreon, so if you want to support Rodrigo for what he does, and I think the way going forward is that he will be offering the Space Crack Mag to his patrons. So become a Patreon, even at the lowest level. I think he's going to be providing it to those patrons, so you'll see it's a great thing, and I'll talk about it a lot, but what's really impressive to me about the magazine is that it's so unique. There's nothing else out there like it, and I mean nothing. I mean, somebody could try and tell me that there is, but I disagree a lot. And then right below that, I have his link to his YouTube, and I just realized that I didn't put the HTTP in there, so it's not a clickable link, but I'll fix that after the show. But you can go to youtube.com/Rodrigo Ferrari-Nunes, and then a link to his Teespring, which will take you to a T-shirt where you can buy the Space Crack Mag T-shirt. So lots of links in the description. Of course, below that is all my links. You're welcome to click those if you want. All right, let's get up here and get off this screen before we have an infinity screen. Let's bring it back here. All right, but to start off, I did want to talk to Rodrigo. A lot of you know him because if you've been watching Glowbusters or you've been watching the Jeranism Friday Lounge, you know him quite well. But some people out there may have never heard of him, might not know who the hell we're talking about. So, Rodrigo, start out with just telling me a little bit about yourself, and then really I want to know how you got into this line of research and when you did.
Oof. Well, I think if you remember, I contacted you way back. You probably don't even remember, way back in 2017, 2016.
I do remember. I remember you reaching out and saying, hey, I want to do an interview with you. And just like I get that many times, I'm like, oh, great. Who's this person?
I think we talked as well a little bit on when I lived in Leiden. But, it was a moment when I was realizing what was going on. In terms of cosmology, it's very interesting as an anthropologist, right, which is what I am. Like you said, you mentioned the little introduction, some of the degrees, but what they mean, of course, is a particular trajectory into, a path of kind of learning different things. I always kind of I'm always on into analyzing things and very interested in the information. I can't turn it off. Mm-hmm. And I've been reading about shamanism and different ways of knowing around the world and different indigenous peoples, because it's a core of anthropology, where I ended up in British Columbia and Vancouver. And then, realizing that history, the official history and the government's narratives are not necessarily what happened, which is what you get in anthropology, right? Something you learn. It's quite odd, because people are, go to high school and regular high school. In many cases, I did something different. I was in Brazil for my high school, and I did an exchange program in Utah where I learned English. That was in the 90s. In Salt Lake City. I went to a high school there called Olympus High School in Holiday, near this mountain called Mount Olympus. And that's how I learned English.
So
and then eventually I ended up studying. So yeah,
just noticing
the long story.
You have a YouTube video from 12 years ago. I didn't know that. So you've been...
Yeah, those are some piano videos, some music videos from way back. There's if you see that guy celebrating there, the Great Farm Trek. This is when students got together to save a piece of farm from developers, UBC Vancouver, and I was kind of involved in that as well. We always we're always critical of the system, but in the university they allow you to be quite critical, even sometimes even overly critical,
right?
And it's tolerated. It's quite odd. The administration doesn't crack down on you. They allow the students to play a kind of political game, but many of them that go into these managing sort of and the sciences degrees, then some of them end up in politics, and I got to see the kind of character that ends up going into politics as well. Some of them were good. Some of the conservatives actually were not so bad in school. I was part of the kind of anti-establishment sort of people in school. So I had, during that time, because I was elected to a position at the graduate, the society, it's the GSS, the Graduate Student Society of UBC. And I was in charge of the publications, but we had this graduate magazine thing that had died in the previous administration. So essentially what it is that there's a society that collects money from tuition of all graduate students of the university, like 10,000 students. And they have a whole building that's gifted to them. And it has a bar, it has a business, and so on. And we had the publications, and that's kind of how I sort of started writing magazine articles and started looking at these diagramming programs that I really like publishing. Different ways of publishing things that I always liked since I was a child. When I was a little kid, I used to cut different photographs and try to set up stories, put them in paper and collages and things like that, thinking of making magazines. So it just came naturally that, we're making videos, we're talking, we're writing. I've been writing a lot.
Yeah,
I've been writing a lot and then trying to find the right way to put it out.
Right.
And there've been, there's a manuscript with Iru, for instance, that Iru needs to take a look, but it's in Portuguese, so it's not so easy. I need to actually talk to him and then work on and finish it. But that's already like 50, 60 pages, and with his contribution is going to be bigger, and that's like a little book. Because there's just so much material, and it needs to be organized. At least it needs to be at least contextualized, in my view, because in videos, it's good because you get the person's voice. You can look at information. But you have to watch the whole video. It's linear. You have to sit. You can double time it, but it takes time, and it takes a lot of time. And with a book, you can take it to different places. There's pictures that you can hold if you print it. But you can also search through it and find relevant information. In this case, what I'm trying to do is get a language that it's a bridge between academic language, and because everyone, the academic language is not so. If the academic doesn't know how to translate the jargon terms, he doesn't even understand it, or she. If you're not able to translate that into regular everyday terms and even metaphors or analogies to make sense of what is it that the jargon, why do you need that piece of jargon, which sometimes in some fields it's a lot of jargon.
Right.
It's very prohibitive, and that's what keeps them in bubbles. But within anthropology, there's been movements for what they call plain language. So being able to do that communication kind of work, and exploring different media, right, is something that for me makes sense. I've tried all kinds of things with production, and
well, there's a lot of people out there making videos. We know that, and one thing that we don't see is anybody constructing a nice piece that can be read, a magazine, if you will, some sort of written collection. And I think that you've done a great job at that, and we're going to get into that. But I'm noticing here, your first video, Understanding the Flat Earth Movement, was kind of where you began about a year ago. And then from there, it seems to have really ramped up where you've started investigating some of these things, like Behind the Curve, how it portrays flat earthers, anthropology and the freedom of analysis. And then you started to get into the NASA stuff. You have some conversations with some people like with Dearth. Of course, you and I had a conversation years ago that I think you've reposted. You've got a video here, How Trolls Think. And basically it's just, you're looking into all these topics. Climate change in antiquity, that's a great video. And then you got invited to speak at the Amsterdam conference, right? Mm-hmm. And go ahead and tell people about, what was your topic there, and was that?
Yeah, there was the burden of non-misrepresentation, and
right.
That was the topic. So in anthropology, when we go and hang out with people and figure out how they think and live and how they, talk and do things, when we go and write about this, we have to respect a bunch of different things. If they don't want you to talk about certain things that are personal, you cannot talk about those things because they're personal. But the most important thing is not misrepresent them, right? If they choose that something is sensitive, you shouldn't talk about that, right? And they tell you. If everything goes with everything else, you shouldn't be twisting their words to make him look like what they're not. And this is what we see. There's a huge phenomenon in this line of work,
right.
Cosmological, I'm calling cosmological control resistance.
Right.
Because I think they have cosmological control syndrome, some of these people.
And they have to turn the narrative in their direction, and they have to make sure that they don't allow the people doing this line of research voices to be heard as is. That they need to create a crazy thing. This person's nuts, this person's out of their mind, this person's a conspiracy theorist, whatever line they need to play. And that's what we saw, obviously, in the movie Behind the Curve. That it just, it's their version of events, even though they're doing a documentary where here we're going to present these people as is, but then they turn it to their narrative. And we see that everywhere.
There you have it, the experts from Behind the Curve, which I did a full analysis of the whole gamut, everything they said.
Right. They're
experts. So I kind of cut the whole film. That one is how flat earthers are portrayed. So I basically cut the film. I classified every take in a film by whether it was showing flat earthers doing their stuff, or it was showing the experts talking about flat earthers. Right. And what the experts are saying and analyzing what they're saying. So I separated both. So we didn't get confused, because that's what the film does. It creates a kind of pace. It creates a kind of crescendo. That's what I realized when I watched it and I was analyzing it. I was like, okay, in order to really tell the story of this film, I need to separate these parts. This is how they portray flat earthers, and this is how they try to explain it with their experts. And then I basically tore apart their experts, so-called experts. It's very bad.
I love some of these titles, like space crack addiction and treatment. because you do need a little bit of treatment if you're out there and are addicted to this space crack. And many people are just heavily addicted. I also have on the screen here your Patreon. So I think Rodrigo needs more subscribers. He's at 2.3 thousand. So please, if you're watching this, scroll down, subscribe, or I guess wait till I put the correct link in there. But just go to youtube.com/Rodrigo Ferrari-Nunes. Become a subscriber there, and then also with his Patreon. Become a patron if you appreciate the work. And I think when you see the Space Crack magazine, you will appreciate it like I did as something totally unique, something you can't find anywhere else out there. There's nobody doing anything like that. Yeah, can you find great videos by different parties, by different creators? Of course. There's tons of stuff out there. But if you want something to read on a monthly basis or a bi-monthly basis or whatever it ends up being, I think this is the place to go. When I got it, I kind of started reading it, and it became almost addicting in and of itself. I thought it was really good, just a great read and somebody to put it on paper, and it's something that can be kept, shared, printed, read, kept in some sort of chronicle, some sort of edition. I just think it's great work. So first, tell me why you think it's important that you started this, or why did you start it? And then also I want to hear, where did you come up with the name? Because the name is great.
I don't know. The name first just came to me. I was like, okay, it just makes perfect sense. It just seemed to be, we had a zombie was one of the things. And, what is it that trying to explain the phenomenon, the trolling phenomenon. And because if you just try to attack it and face it, in a kind of battle or something, it never works out. And we know that there's something, it's almost like possession or something like this. It is some sort of, it's a twist, takes over people. It's like a parasite.
Well, it's great evidence of social conditioning. I don't know if there's really a better piece of evidence than the social conditioning that exists around space and the whole idea of planets and space travel, things that nobody on this earth will ever experience. They'll never get the benefits of, but yet is so held dearly because it's taught as part of the early education. It's shown in movies. It's shown everywhere in the social aspect of life that it becomes very addicting to people. And for whatever reason, whether they don't like the place that they live or whether they're not impressed with the place that they live, they all of a sudden have these aspirations and these dreams of the outer lands. What's out there for me? Where else can I go? Think of the people that are lining up to go to Mars, which would be the most miserable existence possible. Yet people are, is there a bigger sign of social conditioning than that? People willing to just dump everything they're doing here. Like, well, this life is terrible. I'd rather go live in a hazmat suit in a dome where we grow potatoes with Matt Damon, and we've got to take an 8-month trip there where I'm stuck in a chair. People can't fly in an airplane where you're allowed to get up and walk around and do all this. People go crazy with that when I got a 10-hour flight, I got an 11-hour flight. People are signing up for an 8-month flight. It's so ridiculous. It's just something so out of this world and insane, yet the social conditioning is clear.
The glory of the frontier. It's one of the myths that they play. It's part of the hypnotism, right? The notion of the explorer, right? How much don't they talk about exploration?
Right.
Right.
And it's just amazing to me that, you can send people to the Space Coast. You can watch them launch these rockets and these huge explosions and all the loud noise and the ground was rumbling and I felt it in my heart and I was shaking. I was so excited. And, of course, we see the rocket take off with its parabolic arc and end up, I'm sure, out in the ocean. And yet you can flip the screen to some view of some rocket flying in space. Of course, there's no stars behind it and there's a CGI Earth rotating around. And people get very excited and think this is what the future holds. This is where we're going. I'm sure we can't take care of this planet, with all the global warming and everything that's going on and all the pandemics, and here comes the Wu flu and everything that's going on. Yet there's going to be something better out there. We're going to be able to go to Mars, and people are so fascinated by these gas giant planets, and Jupiter's 100 times the size of Earth, and it's
gas giant,
gas giant, and where's Voyager 1 today, and we're still communicating with this satellite that's 13 or 14 billion miles away, and it's just ridiculous to me. And again, to each their own, right? Different people enjoy different types of entertainment. I've mentioned before, and maybe it's because I grew up this way, it was something that my dad used to wake me up at 11 o'clock at night to watch WWF wrestling. and it's something that I enjoy. And people say, yeah, you enjoy that, and it's fake. Yeah, it's very known that it's a scripted show. It's entertainment. And anybody who says like, oh, you're an idiot for watching, I'm like, well, it's a form of entertainment. I kind of enjoy it. Not as much as I used to. I certainly don't watch every Monday night. I've got a show on Monday nights. I don't watch wrestling on a weekly basis. But it's just funny that I'm okay with people's form of entertainment. And so if people accept that, they like Star Trek, they like Star Wars, that's fine.
Right.
Accept it for what it is. It's entertainment. It's a fantasy.
It's fantasy.
It's Narnia, correct. But there's a whole group of people out there that have adopted it as real. This is actual. This is, and of course, when you send people to the so-called moon, you send people to walk on another planet. All it does is condition people to think, oh, well, here's these guys. They're landing on a sphere. We must be able to live on a sphere. And it's just a whole trend that continues, and people become very married to it. And I've talked about it a million times. When you look at the Apollo program, the way they spread it out to some 25,000 companies or something like that, 40,000, 400,000 people directly involved.
That's why it works. That's why it works.
Oh, yeah,
exactly
so
what you explain in your film, right? The size of the industry.
Oh, yeah, it's ridiculous. And people fail to realize that. I mean, you always get the question of why fake this? And you're like, well, yeah, why make fake movies? Well, yeah, because none of the movies that you see in the theater are real. But why do they fake them? Because they make an incredible amount of money. They provide an incredible amount of jobs. Think of all the extras. Think of all the, whatever they are, sound guys. The
Oh yeah, look at the
guys,
list at the end of the film, which is what film students must actually watch and understand as well, because they need to understand who's doing what.
So once you realize that the space agency or the space economy is more than music, TV, movies, and I mean all of movies, not just Hollywood. I'm talking across the world.
Bollywood.
Yeah, all of that. I mean all of it combined, music, and then add to that the video game industry, and space is bigger than all of them combined. And once people start realizing that, they see how incredible the deception is, and how
much goes to waste. Can you imagine how much people shouldn't be starving, people shouldn't be living, everyone should have a comfortable home and clean water and energy.
But I also understand that this creates
that would be science, right?
Right. It just creates a lot of jobs. It creates a lot of industry. I understand that. I accept that. That's the great thing about our line of research is once you understand these things, it's just like the mainstream media. It's okay for me to watch the news because I know what to accept from it, what to not, when to look for the cues that something is just a story to scare me, something is just a story to misrepresent something wants you to feel a certain way. It's all involved in this social conditioning. And once you accept that and understand that, then you look at the world in a whole new light. And I just think there's a lot of people out there.
Which extends into academia as well, to some certain parts of academia for sure. Right. And in universities, a friend of mine sent me an email, shocked that the CIA was sending emails to students saying, "Hey, join us" and stuff. But I was like, "Yeah, man, that's kind of they've done that. They do that forever." Like,
right?
They put post jobs for university students, of course.
Because it's so easy. I mean, they could say anything on the news tomorrow, and the world will believe it, which is pretty scary. It tells you exactly the power of the tube, the power of the TV, the power of radio, the power of education.
That was part of the presentation as well in Amsterdam, right? The burden of non-representation, right? The fact that the anthropologist needs to be ethical and not misrepresent the person,
right,
that he's talking to and talking about and writing about, is completely the opposite of what we see over and over again with the media, as you're explaining.
Well, we're not, and I'm not misrepresenting people when I say, oh, there's people out there that believe that gravity is actually the bending of space-time. There's people who believe that there is a fabric of space-time in the vacuum of space, where planets are rotating and going around giant suns, that the sun that we see in the sky, you can go out and see it today, take a look up, is 867,000 miles wide. I'm not misrepresenting people when I say that they think it's that large. I'm not misrepresenting at all. That's what they believe. They believe that the sun is causing this massive warp of what is a fabric of space-time, and that's what causes gravity, and that these planets are rotating around them, and that these distances are real. When you talk about light years and you say, well, how far is the closest star?
Space crack itself, that's a whole basis of foundation of space crack.
Right, it's space crack. I mean, it's just to think about those distances and to think, oh, well, it takes the light from the sun 8 minutes to get here, and this is how fast we can go out there, and we have to avoid all these crazy meteorites and micrometeoroids that are coming in at 50,000 miles per hour and are not damaging our ship. And the temperature on the moon is 250 positive to 250 negative in the shade. It's all just a bunch of spacecraft. They keep loading their pipe. They love it. Why? Because it's so out of this world that you can't even fathom. I mean, we've talked about it before when you say, how far is the closest star? And people tell you, that, well, of course they don't know if I'm on the street asking people, but the people who are flat earthers certainly know that the closest star, according to them, is 25 trillion miles. And to even fathom that kind of distance is ridiculous unless you are smoking some space crack.
People never bother to ask, how do they know? I guess they may ask one point when they supposedly naive, somebody says, oh yeah, no, that star is but whatever trillion, billions and billions and billions. And the person says, how did you measure it? How do you know?
Right.
And then it's probably some appeal to authority. Think, are you crazy? Are you going to question astronomers or something like that? Are you stupid? Or something? Who knows what it is? But when you look at the story they tell, it really doesn't make sense. You can't do those things.
They try and compare it. They try and compare it to technology, right? And look at you. You don't believe these guys, but you have a cell phone. You're talking on your iPhone. But it's like there's quite a big difference between my iPhone and telling me that the stars in the sky that I can just see clearly right there are 25 trillion miles at minimum. And again, people who get confused of how much a trillion is, and Dave Weiss has said it many times before, how long is a trillion seconds? You'd think, okay, well, I don't know. It's 31,000 years. Just a trillion seconds. Yet they're telling us that the stars in the sky are a minimum of 25 trillion miles. It's insanity. Again, and people, if they accept it as entertainment, they accept it as a story, they accept it as Narnia, that's one thing. The problem is we've got a vast majority of the world, and I mean 99% probably. Maybe we've knocked that down to 98%, but we haven't done much damage.
One thing that's funny about what you just said, which is pretty incredible, I think, is that how that kind of charge that you just said you get, that they say, oh, you use technology, how can you be against science? What's so funny about this is that it is a kind of double thinking version, and it's so ironic because technology that you're using, it's consistent with our critique of the ball. It's electricity, it's electromagnetism.
Yeah.
And it works kind of like water as well in a plane and so on, the way electricity works and how they conceive of it when they study it and everything. So it's kind of just a load of spacecraft confusion that they have when they say that, like to claim that you're pre-Copernican and that means you're anti-technology and so on, as if people before Copernicus didn't know much better. Just look at the constructions in Europe at the time of Copernicus, compare them to some of the ancient stuff that you get even in India or in Egypt and so on. The Europeans recognized that actually way back in antiquity that the Egyptians had something going there, right?
Right.
So it's not like the Copernicus is the epitome of thinking or an achievement or anything with their string and a monocle or whatever it is, whatever it was, the magnification that they had, and using a string, and then they actually figure out the heliocentric model. Yeah, it's such a fairy tale, the whole thing.
Yeah, and I hope people just understand that, right? I mean, and again, it's up to people. I certainly am not telling people what they can believe. They can believe anything they want. If you want to believe that Disneyland is an actual real place where Pinocchio lives and where the princess lives and where Snow White lives, that's fine. I don't care. I mean, you can believe whatever you want. It's fine by me. I just hope you understand or recognize that it is a fantasy. And, of course, Disney, we know how big of a role they've played in all this and the social conditioning, putting it in people's minds from a very young age. And man will go to the moon, and man will do this, and man will travel the stars, and come to our space world, and come to our space mountain, and come look at all, And again, people just get caught up into it, and it makes a lot of money for people, and that's what happens. So let's go ahead and bring up the magazine because I want to have people check it out. And again, this is volume 1. The link, and there's actually 2 links. One is to the Spacecraft Volume 1, a great magazine. You'll enjoy it. And then also there's an Arius report, which is a supplement to Chapter 1. And I just think it's an amazing amount of work that you've done. Let me switch over there. Sorry. So there's the Arius report. We can get to that second. Go ahead and go back to Space Crack. And so, yeah, so it's just a PDF, easy to read, easy to click, easy to download, have it on your PC, and go ahead and, sit by the fire tonight, sit in your couch, sit in bed, and have a read. I think it's a great volume. And again, I don't know how many times I have to say it. It's completely and totally unique. It's something I haven't seen before. I don't see anybody else really putting together a great readable edition like this. So kind of take us through it. Take us through what we're looking at now, which is the cover. And go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a few things, the next volume is probably going to be more focused on some of the information that some of the materials, like there's Kubrick, for instance, his works. I really want to do something about this because I've studied that as well, and I have great interest. I want to do the kind of research that I know that the people that are supporting my work will be excited about, and that excites me in that way intellectually, and that's something that you want to share. And try to present it in a way that's interesting. What we're seeing here is Artemis's, the NASA program logo to make space, which is symbolic. Of course, they have this kind of thing which you see in this film, Home, an attachment to the head, the mind control. And I think this is almost like the snake of going down the pyramid of Kukulkan, the plume serpent of the Mayan, that they use. But this is eerily similar to what you see in Kubrick's film Clockwork Orange, right? Which is, so full of symbolism and showing the torture, mind control kind of programs that we know are married at the inception with NASA and the Nazis that come over to take over NASA to start it with the Satanists. So there's like Jack Parsons, which deserves some attention. I've been reading a book about Jack Parsons, and probably the next volume is going to feature that. Needs to be looked at because that's the beginning of NASA, how it works, right, in connection with the Nazis, and part of why we have here this puppet, right, is being carried by these secret sort of machines that they have that we know that they have, that are supposed to be the fake alien invasion, the Blue Beam Project that Edu talks about. And this is from the cover of Chris Hadfield's book. And I put a carrot in the hand of the astronaut because it's a space crack carrot. And the rocket, this is a rocket plume, but it's also the back of the carrot. And he's sitting on a ball, riding his skate into the universe, right, held by this sort of hidden hand, I guess. And mad, the idea of crack being also, how a joke. Crack is a joke, and just remembering that space has been ridiculed from the start. Mad Magazine has done a lot of this. I think I mentioned this in the beginning of the magazine in some of the articles. So what I said is that some of these things are about, some of the articles here, and they're short, are about some anecdotes about how academics incorporate the language of transhumanism itself, which is at the core of space crack, whether you call it a syndrome, a parasite, or how people get sucked into the symbolism and the productions, the cultural productions, the fictions, Neil deGrasse Tyson being one of the big fiction out there that they have.
Have you seen it? It makes me laugh that you have the astronaut on strings. Have you ever seen Jim Carrey's website that has the astronaut on strings? I don't know. A lot of
I remember. I think he drew it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he's got some art or something on his website. I can show it real quick on the screen just so everybody sees it. I brought it up here because I hadn't seen it in a while. But this image here, I just think it's funny. This is from his official website, his own website. You can see him. He has the picture here of the guy walking up the stairs to the doorway at the backdrop from Truman Show. But you'll notice over here he's got the astronaut, and whether or not you can see it, the astronaut is on strings. Maybe people can see that at home or maybe not. But he's got all kinds of crazy little art at his website. But I just think it's funny when you you have somebody who you think's in the know, like somebody like that clearly has on his website pictures of astronauts on strings. Why would you have astronauts on strings? What other possible reason could you have besides knowing that the whole idea of space, the whole idea of spacewalking, and the whole idea of space travel is nothing more than a puppet show. Anyway, back to your Spacecrack magazine. And again, folks, go ahead and click on the link and get this magazine yourself. You're going to see it's a hugely exhaustive edition. Must have taken a lot of work. I can't even imagine how many hours went into this, and especially when I didn't even know there was a supplement. When you showed me the Arius report today, I thought we were going to be looking at something that was 2 or 3 pages, and then, yeah, here you go. And by the way, there is a link to this as well. And again, how many pages is this? I don't have it up right now on my screen, but it's another
34.
Another 34 pages. Really well put together. And again, what do you use to build these? Because maybe people are interested in doing something the same. I've thought about doing something like this now that I've seen yours. I don't want to copy you exactly, but I think it's such a great idea, and maybe I can work on providing an article here and there.
I can show you some things if you like. I can show you how I use it, and I think you really learn it quickly. But I'm using a program called Affinity Publisher because I don't want to use Adobe. Adobe has its publishing software as well. It's called, InDesign, I think. But it's just like InDesign, but it is, you pay one time and it's cheap, and it's incredible what it does and how easy it is to use if you enjoy putting together publications and setting up.
So go ahead and I'm scroll down on this one just to show people what we're talking about. It's a really nice layout. It's like a magazine that you would read at home, and we can just kind of, this is the Arius report, and we'll go back to Spacecrack and talk more about that. But again, it's great that you have the link, providing it to people for free. Thank you for doing that for the show. It's nice. So people are watching. This Volume 1 and the supplement are available right now if you scroll down and click the links. So talk a little bit about this if you want, but I'm more interested right now in Spacecrack. Yeah, go ahead and read that section if you want to have
this section, like I had used what this guy is, what the supplement is, just to explain that a little bit, is one of those engineers, independent scientists. He contacted me with his research anonymously. I'm explaining this here in this little essay, talking also about the idea of the paradigm shift information network, which is, different than the Spacecrack magazine, because that can have a satirical element, a comical element. It has those elements, and it can, push boundaries as well. And also be serious. Here, it's something a little bit more serious about the data, something that I want to also build with FECore. So the paradigm shift information network, people sharing information that's vital for the paradigm shift. Unfortunately, I think it has to be paired up with publications that look like, that at least do what academic publications do, at least try to do. And this is not exactly that, because it's simply the data he shared with me, explaining here, and then I give the email that he sent me, what he says. There's a video, there's a link. You click on the link, it takes you to the video that where I discuss. Oh, this video is private, so I'm going to change it for you guys so you can see. I've been putting some of my videos private because I'm going to change them to put them in another platform. But I'll change this video. But it's a video where I discuss this information that he first gave to me. And here he goes through different balloon flights, the routes, different historical balloon flights, the photographs they took, and then using a professional world simulation software that can have plane and spherical models made. He plotted the balloon and compare the results of the observation. He gives a bunch of information, different balloons, and you get the results. He talks about all kinds of stuff, links to FECore as well. And what you see is that the spherical simulations don't match the photographs. In every case, this is a spherical simulation, spherical again, and when you go to the plane, they start matching the photographs, and this is again spherical and plane. So it goes through this whole thing, and I think at the end I have a little spiel here on. I have links to your channel and to some of our friends to this, and I have a spiel here on how it is important to help.
So
and then,
those are actual links from in the magazine?
Yeah.
Wow.
So if I click here.
Oh, very cool. I didn't even know that. All right, cool.
Go straight to your website.
Thank you. Awesome.
So that's one of the things that's really cool about some of these programs. Now Spacecrack. So yeah, any questions about this? Yeah, you can do the table of contents. It's pretty much automatic when you're working with these kinds of softwares. It seeks for a particular heading that you have in the whole document, and it creates a table of contents for you. And, page numbers, you can make them look in any way you want. You can make master pages that are kind of templates for certain sections if that's what you want to create. If your magazine is going to have, particularly, say we want like a film area, always going to have a film that we're going to talk about, and we're always going to have someone who's doing research, and we talk about their research. I want to do, for instance, I'm going to do Alex's music. I'm going to put something about it. So that will link straight to him, and you can the only thing you cannot do is have a video play inside of it.
Right.
But my problem was that I was writing a bunch of stuff, and I have for a while I have another thing which is like a book in Portuguese is being revised as well on this theme from a couple of years ago that someone was going to revise it and didn't, and I'm still waiting for it. So I started accumulating, because like I was saying the other time, anything I look at, what I'm reading, I'm writing on it, and I'm thinking about how I can write about it and bring to bear on the things I'm studying. And then that generates a bunch of stuff. Our conversations as well, we go through a lot of information, and we need to explain some of the stuff to people who are coming in cold into this. They never even thought people could ever question the ball, and then suddenly they see that there's some reason behind it. Then they want to get some sort of bearing on what is it that they need to know, or and you get lost really easily. And I mean, there are some things I can think about. They're interesting, but we don't have discussions, and we don't have comparisons. For instance, historical. One of the things I want to do in the study of astronauts, how they move, how they speak, what they say, their publications. We need to have some sort of comparative study of different astronaut publications, things that they say. A little bit of this is done here, and of course, I mentioned that this work has a mixture of things. It's kind of experimental, the first one, and it is for the people that have been supporting me on Patreon, which are not so many right now. And here we have this little section, what I call psychorectal competitions, right? Which is how Chris Hadfield describes in his book what happens to the applicants that become astronauts. Mm-hmm. Right? And they get this invasive process that includes rectal exams. And this is quoting from his book, Psychological Tests, Rectal Exams, Endless Interviews, Written Texts, things I discussed before. That's in his book. And, it's very odd. Right? This is very odd that this is something that's left for the last minute, and that they mention as part of this, because I think in a way they're victims. I know they're people get pissed off at Don Pettit and stuff, but who knows what they've been through? I don't know.
No.
Who wants to know? Is that what you said?
No, I said, how would we know? I mean, it's just ridiculous.
How would we know? Yeah, I mean, they can
say different things. They can tell us different lineups. But again, I always talk about the fact that they say there's 1 out of 4,000 applicants make it. What necessitates or what requirements are needed to be that 1 out of 4,000? Well, it certainly isn't a high level of intelligence if you look at people that they select and people that we see talk from the ISS and astronauts that give interviews, and certainly Don Pettit is a great example.
Right.
If this guy is the 1 out of 4,000 applicants, we've got issues. We've got terrible
Something
issues.
is very wrong.
Something is
very wrong.
So I tend to think that
because
it's just
it is
like,
a production company, right? Sorry.
Right. No, and I think it has a lot to do with those that are maybe hypnotizable. We've talked about that a lot. If you listen to Monday Night Raw, Dave Weiss and I talk about that all the time. The certain percentage of the population that can be hypnotized, that can be convinced of something, or told, hey, we'll pay you this amount for, you have to keep your mouth shut, whatever it is. And it may just be hypnotism, but the certain percentage, and maybe that's why they go through these extensive trials, because 1 out of 4,000 people is the one that's perfect for the job of lying to the world about space travel. Who knows?
In the selection, right? In the selection process, they would select the people who are more susceptible to their programming. And who knows what's the criteria, but that's a really good guess what it would be. I think that their ability to be hypnotized or not. But I think also when you talk about the hypnotism that they do with the ball is this long-term dripping torture style, Chinese torture, the dripping of the thing in your head. It's not like in Clockwork Orange, where they put him in front of a TV or a movie screen and force him to watch all this violent stuff. That is like a metaphor for what we're getting in a slow dripping form. You know what I mean? It's like it's constant beat. There's a rhythm. The ball comes. You look at the TV, the newspaper, the authorities. They're giving you what's happening in the world. Ball in the back. You go and watch your film that you really like. Ball in the back. The ball is there everywhere. The science section of the newspaper is the ball. Is the satellites. Is the space and the gadgetry. It's another way of catching people. Men love gadgets. Men love women also, but it's kind of this thing. Men, mechanics, construction sites. They want to they get enamored, fall in love with the object and its construction, and that is how they able to bamboozle a whole section of the engineering spectrum.
I saw it. I don't remember what chat it was in today, but Life is Short posted a tweet from somebody to Elon Musk that was asking, will the Starship really have these large windows showing this starship where people are sitting in these chairs? You saw that? And he says, wouldn't it be a structural hazard and let solar radiation in? And Elon Musk's answer to that question was, there will be a common area in the forward section with a big window like this. It will be a lot heavier than steel, but not dangerous. Consider astronauts on the moon with a very thin windowed helmet. They were fine. And this is this is where I think that there's, whether you believe Elon Musk has no knowledge, whether he's just an idiot, whether he's a pawn, whether he's an actor, you can believe whatever you want. I think that maybe he believes that people did go to the moon. So when you have that idea that, well, people went to the moon and they were fine and they had a thin helmet, well, this is why no space travel will ever take place. This is why we'll not be sending people up there, because people have the wrong ideas about space, and they might build their little crafts with the idea that, well, I can build this craft but then they're going to send some people up in a test and people are not going to make it and they're going to get...
Man, they're new suits, man. The ones that they keep reinventing their suits. And the one guy who got in a suit and went into a vacuum chamber lasted, 5 seconds and fell like a potato bag and blacked out and had his tongue boiling for 10 seconds. They don't show you that. Like that, they kind of black that out. Oh my goodness! And in the Ad Astra film, Brad Pitt is in the middle of the moon, and I guess he is shot or something happens, and his suit starts. It cracks open. I mean, you're immediately dead. But he's like, "Oh no, yeah, no problem. It's
a little bit of duct tape.
Got a leak."
Well, then you got a leak, and I'm sure there's some sort of production or some sort of procedure that we take when we have a leak. Don't know.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom Pettit. All right, so go back to your Spacecraft Mag. I see you have the page up with Cremo. Yeah, this is another interesting thing, this intersection with the ancient alien discourse, at the limits, at the edges of the cosmological control resistance research movement, or whatever you want to call it. What we're doing, what everyone's doing. Because, of course, once you realize that mainstream history is not true, of course, you get to a point where you start questioning geological truth, so-called geological truths, like facts from geology. And Michael Cremo has done a lot of work on cataloging these anomalous findings, which are hundreds and hundreds. His book, The Forbidden Archaeologist, is very large.
I used to have it. I lost it somehow. I don't know where it is. But I have some of his other books, which is like Human Devolution. It's quite interesting. He talks about spiritual phenomena. He's a nice guy. Once sent some email, exchanged some emails with him. But he falls short from critiquing, some of the issues, some of the calibration techniques, right? With these things that yield, these machines that yield great dates out of materials. And one of the problems is that some of these machines, you put a material that you know the age for, and it still may give you an ancient age, you have a problem. And also geology is based, the theory of strata being layered one upon another in slow, year after year, a layer of dust, this fine layer, then another fine layer, and so on, and that accumulating over millions and millions of years, that's a theory. It's not something observed. And what we know is that havoc and transformation can happen quite quickly. We know even from famous event like the Pompeii 1979 AD Vesuvius eruption, that the coastline grew, and you can go to where the site of Herculaneum, which is this buried city. You go to a place called Herculaneum now, and under it there's like a hole in the city that's being excavated. And you go into the ancient town that's been buried by the ashes, and there was a coastline was there. Now it isn't anymore. And that shifted from one day to the other. So that kind of goes against this idea that these strata they see were formed over millions of years. And of course, some of them cannot be like that because they bring, mixed bones, broken bones, and obviously they're being washed together. There's all kinds of complications.
Well, that's the big problem with the whole thing is, like you said, the calibrations or just accepting that these dates must be right, and then building your whole study around that is a scary thought. Again, I've talked about it before. When you have faulty foundations, everything that comes after that is a crapshoot. And the further that you go with these faulty foundations, the more nonsense it becomes at the end. And we really see a sign of that. And I think it's on your next page or so. And by the way, thank you to Miguel Beaumont for the super chat. He says, keep up the good work, guys. But I believe it's the next page or on academic authority. It's good. The upper right-hand corner here where it says, if you can conform quietly and be cynical about how you get research funding, you've mastered the ethos for a successful academic career. Just master the impression management techniques necessary, and a whole new world of artificial prestige and brown-nosing opportunities will open itself up to you. And the opposite of that is exactly what scares them, right? The idea that if you don't conform, then there will be no funding, then there will be no notoriety, and you will be sent away. And of course, they convince people with Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about and other people that everybody challenges everybody's work and everybody goes after everybody's work, and this is how science stays honest. But it's not the case. If you think if you're you're a biologist or something, you will not have any notoriety. In fact, you will not have a job if you try and question the evolutionary timescale. I've talked about it before with these doctors that are studying dinosaur bones, supposed dinosaur bones, and coming back with carbon dates.
Soft tissue.
Soft tissue, and they carbon date this stuff, and it comes back at 10,000 years. And whether or not you believe, that aspect, well, then when they try and come forward and say, hey, wait a second, we've got an issue, these T-Rex bones or have soft tissue in them, when we're dating them, they're coming back 10,000 years. What happens is those people lose their jobs. They're no longer allowed to send bones into laboratories. They get ostracized, removed from speaking conventions. Why? Because you're going completely in the face of this whole 67 million year nonsense that's needed for evolution. And it's all over the place. So Neil deGrasse Tyson is completely wrong when you look at it and say there is no scientist out there that's making any money that has any notoriety for going against the mainstream idea of evolution. In fact, you're not even allowed in some schools to even mention that there's an alternative to evolution. It is what is required as part of the educational program, as part of the entire packet that's being put out.
As if that's not a form of creative of cosmological control, right?
Right.
And that in social sciences, in anthropology and in sociology, if people have read the work of Pierre Bourdieu that I talk about a lot, that's symbolic violence, right? It's how the state generates the perceptual categories that you incorporate to explain your world. you depend on what the state tells you. Neil deGrasse Tyson is connected to NASA itself. He's a propaganda boy for NASA. He begs for money for NASA for space exploration.
Of course.
So he's a political player. He's giving us what the state wants us to believe. In a way, him and other actors that we know are out there that are part of the same kind of game, and one
because the opposite will get you nowhere. The opposite will get you nowhere in life. I mean, you will not have a job. You will not have people follow you. You will not have people like you. Scroll down a little bit to, I think you talk about it under politicking or honesty, which may be another, right about there. Yeah, so I mean, if you read that, I love that you talk about it in the second paragraph here. The intellectually honest who ask difficult questions, who probe into the hasty conclusions of colleagues and question how they use theory, may be ostracized for not playing along with mediocrity. The belief that badge and grant flashing, prestigious institutionalized scholars are so critical and open-minded that they even welcome critiques directed to their work because they are so devoted to science is pure mythology. Really well said. So this is the kind of stuff
that happens a lot. This is kind of part of the theme also that here he's talking about, that he starts out his lecture by saying something everybody knows, that researchers, in order to have an academic career, must conform to the models of the predecessors.
Right,
not follow the information and the data, whatever leads. That leads to what you said, when people say, okay, let's, the obvious thing. You get the bone. You're like, okay, is it T-Rex bone? Yeah, it is. How do you know? Oh, yeah, we excavated it. Where is it? Okay, let's see. Let's check. Okay, good, check. Cut it open. Okay, what's here? Oh, soft tissue. Oh, my God, kick them out.
Right. Yeah, then you're not allowed. You have to build off of these foundations. And the problem is, like we've said, what if those foundations are faulty? That's the problem. And you're never going to get
They
anywhere.
don't want to admit that.
And you may try, believe me, you may try to write an article for a scholarly magazine or something, and then, of course, there's the peer review. Well, what does peer review do? Peer review removes the idea that anybody with an idea outside of the box will ever be allowed to publish. Why? Because everyone who's built their entire careers off another foundation gets to read your article first and said, no, this is bullshit. Sorry, this doesn't go by our paradigm.
Yeah.
This is completely
unless you get very lucky and you get a peer reviewer which is the right peer reviewer. The way peer review should be is there should never be rejection.
Right.
The way it should be is that it should be, this is how you improve it. This is how you improve it, and you may take it or leave it or not. They can, I guess, they always have the power to reject. They're editing it. They decide. There's this thing. It's not like there's always an editor that can say it's good or not good, and it doesn't go. And because there's so many different expertises, sometimes you send something to a journal, and the editor knows it has some quality. It's maybe written properly, checks all the boxes, but they don't know how to comment on the content because it's not their discipline. So they have to try and find someone who has the power to do that. Like that could get you to somebody who, depending on how they do it, depending where you send it, you can get lucky that someone really wants to help, which should be the way it goes, and maybe they even help you improve it. That's the idea. The idea is to improve it and to see if it's good enough. But what it really happens is that there's size constraints, of course. There's only word limits and whatnot. And then this kind of technical requirement, because sometimes you cannot tell the story, the full story in such a little space, and that's part of the problem. They think that condensing into that space makes it better, but sometimes is very difficult. And what I found is that as I condensed certain pieces, as they were requested to be condensed, when I got to a point where they said, oh, no, you need to have all that stuff that you condense from back on it. Right. It's like an endless cycle. That's 9 months later. That's how slow it is. Whether, you could have sent it to a professional editor and say, okay, how to improve it, boom, 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 $50. Or even if it's $100, then you have your pieces ready, you put it out, and you have a publication. People can read it. People can run with it. And why should you, after spending a bunch of time writing and studying and doing all kinds of stuff and looking to something as serious as what we're looking at, with so many people involved in it, so many people have been lied about, like you, like Bob, by this behind the curve. There's never been retribution for this, right? That's it is basically criminal what they did on purpose, right? In a way.
Course.
It shouldn't happen, and the only way you have to go against it is to go against this by using all we can. And writing, I think, is one of the ways, this is something I do. But what am I going to do? I'm going to go and send it to peer review, to journals, and wait 8, 6, 7 months for peer reviews, and go to all these restrictive, little formatting, nitpicking things where they have some editor at the end who does this, Photoshop job at the end and puts the journal together. I can make a journal that looks better, exactly the same at the very least, or better in within an hour. I can set up a template. I get any academic journal. It's so easy to do with that publishing program, for instance. Right. And you write your stuff and you send it to people. If they want to comment, maybe they comment, maybe they don't. Then you put it out there, because why should you be doing research if you cannot share it? What's the point? You just keep it, read all these books, do all this writing, and write things that I think are interesting, that I have no attachment to it. I don't care. Somebody comes and says, obvious. I don't believe this is, I think this is wrong, or this is that, or this is, I can choose when I hear it's something else. It's already something, and I'm off to something else. And if I'm wrong, if I'm right, if I can change, it's good. If you're wrong, it's good.
It's honest, it's authentic. You grow from that. I've talked about that a million times. Scroll down to page 14. I think that, is your screen up or is it frozen? Oh, you're good. Page 14, I'm looking at, where it says prestige and losing face. And I just love that, opening line where it's talking about losing face is quite a deterrent when all you have is prestige, talking about some of these guys in the upper echelons of the scientific community. I mean, the fear of losing face can override the power of information to lead one closer to the truth. How could that be any better said? And these are the kind of things that are great. You go on in the next paragraph talking about the spinning ball Earth as a case in point. Anybody who questions that would lose face, would immediately be called names, would immediately be ostracized. So is this the best way to get to the truth, is to have these scientists that are so afraid of losing face that they can't even ask some of these questions? They can't even consider them. You have Neil deGrasse recently telling us he won't debate. Why? Because it's already a truth. We don't need to look into it further. And that's not the definition of science in anything that I've ever seen. The definition is asking questions. It's not only asking questions of the things that we have questions about, not about the things that we think we already know.
And the fear of open conversations, right? They call it, there's this model of adversarial debate. But if suddenly me and you here, we're sharing information, you disagree on something, you're going to explain it to me, and maybe, maybe I won't be convinced, and vice versa, right? And that's okay. And that's not called a debate. That's called having different opinions and
a
figuring out what's next
conversation with real people. Yeah, it's just a conversation. And you're not even allowed to have that in some circles. And that's what's great about freedom of speech that has really gotten away from it. I mean, is it's okay to hear anything. And just like everybody has a right to free speech, everybody has a right to hear things and to say, I don't agree with that, I don't believe that, that's fine. But to come down so heavily on it, to basically make fun of people that question these mainstream narratives is their way of staying on top. As long as you have the numbers, then you'll always believe the same thing. You're just going to continue to put forth the same information over and over again. And yeah, is there new things that come out? Sure, as long as you build it off the foundations. The problem is that those foundations are faulty. So if you're building,
and once you see through that, that's what they're driving them crazy. Is that once you see through the foundations being faulty, right, you don't get caught again in the bamboozle, and that spreads, and it's growing beyond. It doesn't matter how much they pump propaganda into it. A lot of people are immune. It's like they've been vaccinated in a way, really vaccinated.
Well, as you go on in page 15, you talk a little bit about Darwin, which I think is great. The whole transhumanist race charade, talking about that is fantastic. It's just a great, unique magazine, and I can't wait for future volumes. So
thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you like some of these bits, because I thought who knows how people are going to think about this. And I, last time when you talk about anthropology, you made a little sort of introduction, and you really capture it. And I was really I was kind of like, wow, Jaren really understands the difference, which, that's great for me. I really feel happy that I managed to at least get to our conversations, got that across. But also you seem to, it seems to be up your alley, so to speak, the kind of interest that you have, because you analyze the economics, the symbology. A lot of people in this in our field, in our social sort of realm, Bob and different people, they have different kinds of approaches, and they're all analytical. And Bob maybe is more interested in some of the science, exactly, the nuts and bolts of the science and the engineering and so on. But you're kind of more, you have a kind of anthropological mind, I think, in the way you've done some of your analysis as well. And it's and you're a communicator, so.
Right. Yeah. I mean, some of the science is a little
well
bit
said how you do it, how you did it, like how you put it. Yeah, go ahead.
So, no, I was just saying some of the science is a little bit above my head. I'm certainly capable of admitting that. Somebody asked me recently, what's your evidence for the ether versus the non-ether? And sometimes I just say, on that, I'll tell you about stuff that I've researched, things that other people have said. I'll tell you about the fact that, but if you really expect me to prove to you that the ether exists when you've got, years and years, hundreds of years of scientists who have never been able to agree on this, I'll certainly be able to give you my opinion. I'll be able to tell you what I think. But as far as proving it to you or proving it to people, I'm not really sure I have that capability. What I do have the capability is, and maybe anthropology is in this fashion, is looking at the people along the path that have believed certain things about it. Where did those things change? Why did they change? What new information came that allowed those minds?
Yeah, the whole history that you have studied, right? Of what they're saying, actually.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean they have to make the calculations and come up with a gadget.
No, exactly. Yeah. No, so you just get to follow along, and so maybe that's, recognizing what you do, and I've talked to other anthropologists out there that are really interested in the nuts and bolts of it all and more about why people believe what they believe, because I'm not sure that we'll ever get to the conclusions that people think we'll reach, right, of exactly what's going on and the mechanism that makes it work. I think some things just are the way they are. So it's more interesting to me to study the people behind it, why they changed it, what was their propping up, why were these certain people put in such high positions of let's everybody look at him? Was there some sort of social construct built around that they were trying to push these kind of social conditionings out to the masses? When you look back at when books first were able to be printed, with the printing press and what went on at that time, that's where I kind of get off, for a loss of, lack of better words. That's where I start to see interesting things fall apart. When I look at quotes of scientists along the way, I've often talked about, Ellis and him talking about, I can construct this spherically symmetrical universe with the Earth at its center, and you can't disprove it based on observations. And then he says a lot of our models are based on philosophical grounds. And he says, I just want to get that out because a lot of cosmology tries to hide that. I've told that quote a million times. People have heard me talk about it a million. Why is it so important? Because at that point you can see that here's a guy deeply involved in this whole cosmological study who admits flat out, this is somebody who went to school, who did all the education, who did all the reading, who read all the books that Neil deGrasse wrote, that passed all the tests, that passed himself, he got his PhD. He did all that, and he comes to the conclusion that the models that we create today are based on philosophical grounds, and that a lot of cosmology tries to hide
math, right? He tries to hide math. Math and philosophy are related because there's a philosophy of math, and how you think about it. But
it's just so important.
He calls it philosophy to try to give it a kind of a spin, but it's really mathematical equations.
And he knows that, and that's why he's saying that philosophically, this is what our models are based on. Is that if somebody can construct a universe that has the Earth at its center, that can't be disproved by observations, that line alone is something that you'll never get Neil deGrasse Tyson to admit, but you have other people in his same field that will admit that. And when they admit that, they can't be making that up. They can't be saying, I'll be able to construct for you this universe with the Earth at its center and you won't be able to disprove it with observations, if somebody could just come forward and say, well, here's an observation that disproves it. Yet that's what you get from all these YouTube channels. That's what you get from McToon. That's what you get from Simon Dan. They'll come forward and say, well, here's the plethora of information that does prove it. You're like, dude, this guy's in that study, and he's admitting that you can't. So
Austin did a great job. I ended up watching later with that McToon guy. He wouldn't let him bully him. Austin wouldn't, in a way. He just kind of recapitulated at the end. So you're conceding, right? La 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 la.
Right.
And the guy didn't know what to do.
Well, you talk about a debate. Scroll down to page 19, where you
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about the debate with Team Skeptic and Nathan Thompson. And this is the kind of cool thing about the magazine, folks, that I hope you like. And again, the description has the link, so you can download this and keep it on your PC and read it when you have time to go through it. It becomes very addicting. You start reading one page after another, and there's such short little stories, short little conversations where you're able to get a lot of information in a short amount of time. And there's just there's not a lot of places. Like I said, it's totally unique, and I'm not going to harp on that more than I have to, but that's the key feature to me that's so impressive. Where else can you find kind of a recap of what happened this month? He's talking about this debate, and then you'll get into new topics. But go ahead and talk about this particular page, and then we'll continue on. We're already at a little over an hour. We said we were going to keep it under, but hey, we've done our best.
Yeah, no, this is, I was impressed, Nathan's composure at this debate against this guy who was just acting out on a tantrum. And it is typical, cracked out. The guy was cracked out on space crack. Mm-hmm. And he wouldn't even have the politeness or the sense of politeness at all. And I thought, it kind of made up for interesting, a little sketch on space crack, riffing on the theme of space crack. And then also, thinking about, what's going on here? Is this guy, one day, is he going to look back and, kind of like those drunk people that see their video when they're really, really drunk and embarrassing and they never drink again, because he's so high on space crack that, his mom would be embarrassed, right? If
I would hope so. I don't think she'd be very proud, but reading from page 19, you're talking about the fact that many Globe believers have flocked around characters like Team Skeptic and his master Red's rhetoric, whose work could not possibly be taken seriously, is very telling. It highlights just how low is the level of opposition that many of us are facing. In other words, there is no opposition. Their effect to their own cause is clearly negative, and it makes the whole community of Globe believers look quite dumbed down, arrogant, incoherent, intellectually and morally challenged, and perceptually impaired. Moreover, they somehow manage to retain an arrogant and defiant attitude in public, unable to control an unexplainable type of pathological rage. Really well said. I think that's sometimes exactly what we get. So, and you talk a lot about the whole materialistic atheist viewpoint. I call it it's just a different worldview. And it's incredible to watch the worldview, and that's what I'm talking about, where I think anthropology does a good job of looking at what people believed at different times of history. And that's where I've really seen the divide between the worldview that we're all accidental, that we're just a speck of dust, that we're just some spinning space rock, that there's, it's like the people who every time they mention the sun have to follow it up with, the sun is just an average star. Just an average star of average size. It's nothing special. It's nothing, which is just ridiculous. The sun is the most incredible, life-giving thing that there ever was. And, they love to dumb it down. Why? Because they want to tell you all the other stars are just the same. It's all the same. They're all
much bigger as well.
Much bigger, much more powerful, much different, much more gravity. They just love to throw that out. And why? It's a worldview. The worldview of the importance of the human race, the importance of the place that we live, the importance of our existence, the importance of our lifespan. That's one worldview versus the other worldview of it's all just nothing. We'll all be gone in no time. We'll all be worm food, and we'll all just re-rise as as new stardust when the stardust explodes, and we all become something else. I don't know.
Yeah, they want that, but they also have a trap for people who want to be spiritual and believe in the ball, because that also happens, right? That's part of the whole trap. But people caught up to it,
right?
Eventually. Because you see in that Dastard, remember we were talking about it.
Yeah.
That his dad is feeling so close to God because he's in Neptune.
Right. He's closer there. Yeah.
Alone from everyone and everything, and that's how you get it. And the farther you go, the closer. That's why it's like a trap. It's almost like a spider's nest kind of trap. Like the Medusa, something like the sirens. It's calling you to the edges of the solar system. It's like this is the singing of the Voyager.
Right.
Drawing you out, and like in a dream world, it might even be that the ball is a prison. With gravity and everything.
I'm reading there on the screen you have, as Ben from Taboo Conspiracy has noted, one of the reasons we know we're not on a spinning ball floating in space is that we'd be dead, if that were the case. You could take it down to page, let's see, what page am I on now? 22. I just think that that's great work. The whole story of the anthropology of NASA engineers and space stories, talking about in the second paragraph the main reason why they think it's possible, talking about these exoplanets and what's on them and what's going on, is that they believe that the NASA probes have actually been deployed into the solar system, providing reliable information. Again, it's the same thing we just talked about with Elon Musk saying, well, remember, men were on the moon and they did just fine with their skinny little space helmet shield. Well, that's not...
Believe me.
Believe me. Yeah. It just becomes an issue where you're like, okay, but if that was faked, then the whole comment by Elon Musk makes no sense. How will we ever prove that? Well, we'll prove it when his shuttle doesn't go into space and it doesn't take people there, because what he believes is just nonsense, or at least what he's trying to push is nonsense. And they love to push things out that is constantly out of people's time frame, right? People are very short-minded. They think on a very local scale. A lot of people don't think ahead 5 years, think ahead 8 years, think ahead 10 years. So it's great to always be... I just watched a recent NASA press conference where they say, we're going to be going to the moon in the 2020s and we're going to be landing man on Mars in the 2030s. And it's very easy to say that, but people need to look back in time and realize that in the 70s they were telling people that there would be man on Mars in the 90s. So you just have to realize that by pushing things out in time like that, by the time it gets...
No, I think it was in the 80s, Jerry. I think
you're right.
You can find...
I think you're right. I think it is 80s.
Neil Armstrong saying that they're going to be in the moon, on Mars in 84 or
That's
something.
funny that you called me out on that, because as I was saying that and I said 90s, I was thinking in my head, I don't even know if they pushed it. It might have been 80s. But you're right. I think it was 80s. I think they were saying that they'd be on Mars in the 80s. So it's so easy for them to just constantly push this stuff out. And people follow along and they just think, well, space is hard. This makes a lot of sense. It doesn't make sense when you look at the past. And just like going to the moon like they did in 1969, 1970, 71, it's the same kind of thing where if you look at that and you understand what they did then the idea that we can't go today is simply ridiculous. But if you look at it in the short term, if you look at it now and you're like, okay, well, today they've decided to go to the moon. Well, I could see that taking 4 years. 2024 makes sense. But of course, as we get closer to that, it'll just get pushed further out. This is the way that they've gone along with the story forever. Why? Because they know people are addicted to space crack. It's and
the next blockbuster in the summer season, right?
Right.
What are the blockbuster season? All the space films. They have to go on the weekends with the family. After you did all your work and got home tired and watched the news every day and worried and paid your mortgage and everything, and then you go to space movies, and you have a small selection in these kind of the way it's set up in the States as well. That some of the movies are played in so many theaters, and I know kind of how it's also pushed into the establishment. If you want to own a movie theater, you're kind of forced to take some films. You can't just choose everything you want to show. So it's still one of the and then of course they go into that, they go back to work, then they hear NASA from time to time. They hear NASA, they're like, I wonder how it's going now. And then, they're going to the moon. Oh, there's this probe. This probe is showing this picture. And then you get a bunch of people, a bunch of nerds that go off and they scour these images from Mars. And as you've shown it's years ago. I forgot how many years ago when you found that Devon Island Mars program, and we probably should expect that they are going to different places, that they have bases in Antarctica or whatever. They setting it up, finding the rocks. We talk about this in Spacecraft magazine, how the rocks are concocted. Right. So yeah, you get that's part of the story. So you have these rovers. Yeah, there's so much information as part of you're writing a novel. Like, look at Star Wars and Star Trek. How many spin-offs you have from books. You just look at so many books on Star Wars. There's toys. There's the blueprints from ships and the different planets and different beings and everything. With NASA, it's very similar. It goes parallel and is inspired by it. Actually, you can find parallels with some of the propulsion things that are suggested in science fiction suddenly make an appearance in the next project that they're funding, or some nerd who then goes into engineer wants to try something in a laboratory, and they get a grant from NASA, and then they get a kind of TED talk where they are just talking about how they're going to go and visit an exoplanet, how they're proposing it in 200 years. What they're looking at the laboratory now is going to allow the ship to accelerate very slowly to super high speeds or something like that. You know, if you've seen those things, right? And that fuels the whole what then we should call the perception apparatus, like the perception categories of how you perceive the world. Because if you believe that this guy is doing all this stuff, there's a bunch of implications to it, right? If you believe that's why there's this question that's asked, you know, David Weiss talked about it, a lot of people talk about it, which has to do with the moon landings. If you know, meeting someone and, you know, you're trying to feel it, Irving Goffman calls the feelers. You send out the feelers. So you come out and you start some conversation, and then you maybe mention the moon landings, and you see how they feel about that, and that's your kind of that's your test, and whether depending on how they react to that, you know, it's safe to move into the rabbit holes, right? So
let's just scroll all the way down to I'm on all the way at the bottom now. What page is this?
The very bottom.
Yeah, just where you have key links, because I think we're getting a little bit long, and I do want to take a look real quick at one more time at the the Arius report. But it's great that you have all these links. Yeah, the Friday Lounge. Thank you, Globebusters, FE Core. By the way, I heard that you are a new board member, FE Core.
Yeah. It's been a little bit.
I didn't know that. So.
Yeah, no, it's been maybe a month or so.
Okay.
Yeah, I just met yesterday with Mike and William. They came over here to my town. William took us to dinner. It was interesting to meet them. Yeah, it was great. And yeah, I'm going to do something like this with FE Core, try to draft, working probably with Karen, and help to come up with publications for FE Core that with the information that they already have, but then have in different forms, different kind of like with the similar to this work.
Let's jump over to the Arius report, which is go ahead and jump to that, and just people download it, see if you like it, read it. Again, you're not going to agree with everything he says. That's not the point. I don't agree with some things that are said in it. It's not. Again, I'd be scared if I ever read something and said, I agree with every single word in this. That's the problem. But you recognize somebody's work. You recognize the time that it took to make this. And I look forward to future installments, future volumes. And I think people will too. And again, it's great. All right.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I try. I want to try to improve it. I don't know, what people's reactions are. People haven't really responded. The anthropologist that I talked to, that I posted on my Patreon, the conversation. It's a Swedish anthropologist. He really liked it. He enjoyed it. He enjoyed how it was bridging the academic and the kind of popular, so-called popular, plain language, which is the most important one. That's what we need to communicate.
Well, you're going to have people that are going to hate it. I mean, I just hate to tell you, that's just the way it goes.
That's fine.
Just, some people will read it and they'll love a lot of it, and they'll not like one paragraph or one page or 2 pages, and then they'll say, I hate this publication. And that's what I've tried to tell people about 1,000 times, and it doesn't matter. I mean, people are going to hate what they're going to hate. That's fine. But I've learned to take the good, leave the bad. Read it for what it is. It's a great work. It's unique. People might enjoy some parts of it. Take the good things out of it, and then you don't have to care about the bad. If there's things you don't agree with it in there, still appreciate the work. It's just like some of my videos. If you don't like the information that's provided, appreciate the time that was into it. And if you don't want to watch me anymore because you're getting to the point where you're like, I don't agree with anything this guy says anymore, then block my channel. It's very easy to police ourselves. Believe me, if Volume 2 comes out and Volume 3 comes out and I read it and I go, this is a bunch of garbage, then you're just not going to catch me reading any more volumes. It's that easy. But I'm not going to make a video and this guy's crazy and this guy says this and this. I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to let it be what it is. It's a great publication. It's unique. It's something I haven't seen before, and I'm happy with that. So go ahead and talk a little bit more about
there's some stuff in there about the way the controversy of the conference and some of the problems that have been discussed recently, which is part of how things work. And I have a particular position on
and it's your honest, authentic position, and that's what I've told people a million times. It's all I ask for. That's what impresses me. That's what I look for. That's what I seek channels who provide, is people who have a different opinion, people who have an honest opinion, people who are authentic, people who give me their feelings about things, their real feelings, and don't just fall into the trap where I
never done that kind of thing.
You've never been that kind of person. It's like the whole thing with
So
I said, you've never been that kind of person. I've noticed that from day one. It's why I want you on the lounge. It's why, because there's a lot of people that fall into this trap where whatever other truthers say, I've got to believe, right? You are somebody like me who has stood up against the Mandela effect, right? Who recognize it for what it is and just understand it. And I still think it's something that they can use to erase people's history, meaning that if everybody just starts believing that, okay, any change in anything means that it's just bad memory, well, then when the world becomes fully digital, when they erase things from the internet, then people will just all blame each other and say, oh, no, this is just our bad memory. So I see the aspect of that. But as far as them changing the time continuum, the time-space continuum, they're going back
and the theories
changing
behind
text.
that. I mean, I look at some of the theories with that, and I have issues with them. It's the same thing. There's these philosophers, like Jordan Peterson or something. People may think he's very smart and whatever. He has some, opinions, conservatives like and whatnot, and they try to follow him or not. But when you hear what he's saying, he's a follower of Jung's kind of theory, which is quite weak. Psychology, after all, psychology is not very, reflexive in terms of its theories. They follow a very narrow way of thinking. So it's not that good. That's why it's probably so famous. Kind of like Richard Dawkins, which is part of the transhumanist apparatus.
And what I would hope is that the people out there look at us saying that about and say, oh, this is great. These are these guys' honest opinions. They're actually, but what you get a lot of times is these people believe something different than me. I full-heartedly believe that they're changing the spelling of Fruit Loops. That I wholeheartedly believe that they're putting braces on somebody in Star Trek that wasn't there before. I don't believe that. I simply hate to tell you that. I don't believe that. Now, there's some funny ones. If somebody asked me yesterday, well, Jaron, don't you think it's weird don't you believe that the Monopoly guy had a monocle? I'm like, okay, yeah, that's how I remember it as well. And then they're like, remember the Jim Carrey movie where the guy has the monocle and he's the Monopoly guy? I'm like, yes, I understand that. But the fact is that I can go to an antique store, I can find a box on the counter that has an old Monopoly game, and I will show you that the person did not have a monocle. They did not. Nobody can go back and change the boxes of old Monopoly games. It's just not possible.
Yeah, but that's the idea. Some people make claims that it's a simulation and all these. It's like the cat in the Matrix. The glitches when something's going on or something like this. I don't know. It never changed one of the songs I play from the 1950s or 60s. It hasn't changed any of the records I listen to that I know the note by note that I can sing along with. It hasn't done that, so I mean, and
they're not changing old VHSs. I mean, people believe, don't you think it's mirror, mirror on the wall? Isn't that what you were taught? Isn't that what you remember? Well, yeah, this is kind of the study of society and how things go and how people can talk from one person to another. Nobody went back and changed the VHS. And yeah, is there magnets out there that you can buy that say mirror, mirror on the wall? Yeah, that's because that's what we all remember, and that's what kind of got passed on in everyday culture. The fact is that that's not what was said in the movie. It's just like if you build it, he will come. And then people find out it's actually they will come. And they're very shocked and they think that the movie was changed. I'm just saying, in my belief, and you can bag on me all you want,
those details change. That's the whole thing. Why those particular details? Why only American movies? Why the people talking about it are linked to those kind of awakening the desert UFO sort of conferences, and they look freaky like high on space crack or something.
It's okay if people believe that. And the thing is, I'll listen to videos about it. I'll watch people talk about it, and I just reach my own conclusion.
I tried, but
I just reach my own conclusion. And until that changes, I mean, again, there's easy ones.
It's
like
bandwagon, right? You can't be just if you're not convinced, you have to say you're not convinced. You can't just say you're convinced because it pleases your friends or something. I've never been like that. I mean, sometimes I've taken sides with my friends. If somebody messes with my friend, I defend him. Somebody messed with a friend of mine recently. There's a whole nothing to do with anything that we're talking about. But I even felt bad that I was so defensive of my friend that I was even kind of maybe going a bit too far in attacking the guy. Right. Everyone's biased. We have our own positions, but
accept that, recognize that, celebrate that. That's a good thing. We should all have differing opinions. That's how you get to the truth. If we all just said, nope, we all believe that the Mandela effect is real and that all these things are changing and that we live in a matrix, then everybody would just follow suit into that world. But it should be impressive to people, not impressive, should be appreciated that there is people out there standing up and saying, no, I simply, I'll call myself a truther. I don't believe that thing right now. Now, again, could my mind change?
It's the coronavirus, right? The same thing. Are you going to just eat it up? because AMTV is also his, maybe you one of his thousands of people signed up to his scheme for Bitcoins and making some money. Do coronavirus on one side, Bitcoin on the other side, all's good.
All's good. Yeah, so I mean, we could go on forever, and I don't want to get too long. We're already an hour and a half, so I think we're going to cut it down. But again, people can find the both these copies, both these volumes, so Volume 1 and the supplement are in the description. Links to your Patreon if people support or want to support genuine content, authentic content, honest content. Rodrigo doesn't back down to certain subjects if he doesn't believe them, and that's great. I love to hear differing opinions, and he has different opinions.
I want to be convinced, I want to be shown that I'm wrong. I haven't had anybody come to me and actually, explain to me.
I like how you said the American movies and stuff, because it's so true. It's like Sex in the City is another one. When I heard that, and I even told my wife, I'm like, well, a lot of people say it was Sex in the City, and she's like, what? No, I watched that show. The girl wrote a column in the newspaper called Sex and the City. That's the name of the show. And it's like, okay, well, that's really easy to figure out. Now, a lot of us that, I hear a lot of people saying, no, it was Sex. Well, those are just people that heard it in passing. They're not people who watched the show, because clearly, if you watched the show, you would know that the girl wrote a column called Sex and the City. Now, of course, you and I, I've never watched one episode.
Sorry, that particular one, for me, it's funny because what I remember was being corrected for saying Sex in the City by people who knew it was Sex and the City.
Right.
That's what I remember years ago.
I just remember hearing it. If you're just some nobody, right, and I've never watched an episode, so when I hear it on TV or on a commercial or something, what makes sense to me, what is actually more correct English, is Sex in the City. Sex and the City doesn't sound like correct English unless you understand the premise of the show. So it's just like that with a lot of subjects, and again, people have different opinions. They're probably going crazy in the chat. You guys are wrong. Life has changed. We live in a matrix. There's sun behind the clouds. I mean, it's just going to go on and on. So we'll get off it, but I hope people appreciate honest content, and this is what this magazine is.
People need to learn to disagree as well. It's good to, that's how you go forward in things.
Yeah, that's what I love. That's what's impressive to me. And again, I watch a lot of channels that I don't agree with a lot that they say, but as long as they're being honest, I'll listen. I'll take the good, leave the bad, until I start finding people that I don't think are being honest. That's where I draw the line. And so far with Rodrigo, I've never heard Rodrigo say a word. I've never read a word that he's written in either of these two supplements, or this Volume 1 or the supplement, and said, I don't think Rodrigo's being honest here. I think he's reading from a teleprompter. I think he's reading a talking point. I think somebody's telling him what to say.
Somebody's feeding me.
Right, exactly. That's where I would draw the line, and that's not there. And that's why a lot of the people that you'll find on the lounge, on Globebusters, those are people. Austin is a new member of the Globebusters. Why? Because I can sit there and watch him do a 3-hour live stream in front of his computer where he's being completely honest and authentic. Boom, after point after point. He's saying what he believes. Nobody's feeding him any lines. Nobody's reading a teleprompter. Nobody's had these pre-recorded things. It's just like the whole document found in the trash can of that one video some Globe channel did where they faked a document and then they faked seeing it in the garbage. I mean, that's disingenuous. That's lying. That's the kind of people I would never watch again. Never watch that. If Rodrigo tried to do something like that, like he was going to be on camera today and he was going to pretend to drop his camera so that it would show some document in the trash, and that document in the trash was fabricated by you and I, and we were trying to get people to go download your... No, this is just... I mean, can you imagine? It's just ridiculous. I mean, I would hope nobody would ever watch me again if that
There's some people, my dad, he published, I think, over 40 books right now. And there's been people in his career who said, oh, no, there's no way. Gets other people doing it. Right. No, other people have to do it for him. Nobody can do that, or whatever. They think that way.
Right.
And I was in the house with him writing by hand. Like he had like these, he write in the A4 pages by hand and then somebody types. And now he writes by hand. But I saw, how much work it was, how much he was, taking time to do all this stuff, and how much it stressed him out as well to have to do it. But, once it's out there, people just think it magically appeared out of nowhere, because nowadays, especially with artists, people don't give a damn. Music is just free. Anybody can make it for anywhere. You don't need to learn it. You press some buttons on a computer and it does it for you. So why should you pay for it? It's a problem for artists that do music that requires study and thinking and so on. It's still possible some places to do it, but a lot of people will just starve. If you have different kinds of talent out there, because they push so much of the mainstream. It's only we're the world of music and art and productions and media production. It's all kind of connected, right? You talk about one thing, but you talk about everything at the same time. Think about contemporary art as well, how that's basically a psyop to make trash art be super expensive, and so they can exchange some things under the rug with exchange millions in payments for some piece of trash art, and then actually be doing other business behind the back. All these things keep real artists and people who are doing real content like you. Censorship is another one similar to these control devices, right? And the way that people are indoctrinated not to contribute, to think that everything should come free, and what they're getting that's free from the television is total indoctrination. They're wasting their time. And when people do things, they're being honest and they want to share the information. They want to be wrong. They want to be questioned. They want to be challenged.
Right.
And they don't get that because the information doesn't come out. Nobody cares. They prefer to watch TV or do something else, or something that's being packaged for them instead of something that took time to craft and put together and try to put in a format that people read.
Putting yourself out there, and it's authenticity. It's out of the box honesty, right? It's a different thinking. It's taking a unique position. It's truthful stances. Those are the things that are impressive to me. That's why Rodrigo's on the Friday Lounge. That's why he joins Globebusters often. That's why I had him on today. So get the Spacecraft Mag Volume 1. See if you like it. If you don't, it's very easy. You right-click on the document and you hit delete, and it's gone. Then you have to empty your recycle box after that. But it's very easy to get rid of if you don't enjoy it. If you do enjoy it and you're like, hey, I would love to contribute to a Volume 2. I would love to see this become a monthly volume, a monthly edition. I would love to see more supplements. Then what you do is you go to patreon.com/anthropology. You sign up for $1 or $5, whatever you think, if you enjoy the information. And if you don't enjoy it, then you don't do any supporting. It's really easy to do. It's just simple. It's the way I live my life. Support what you like or it goes away. So thank you, Rodrigo. Is there any final words you want to say before we head out? I don't want to go too long.
Thanks everybody for hanging out here in the chat. I see that Bob is making a comment here. Thank you, Bob, for hanging out and listening too. And yes, it'd be awesome to have people who are interested in contributing and helping some way or another. Of course, in order to keep it, I try to support the people that I know and whose work I find quite interesting. Like I was saying, Stellium 7, I think, there's something to talk about there. It's so interesting. There's so many avenues to take. Right. And there's a lot of things that I've already written. For instance, an astronaut's books, Edgar Mitchell's book, I have quite a lot, like enough for a whole magazine. So, but it would be great if there's someone that can contribute with something, which is obviously you and anybody that knows me or who feels like Aerius. So Aerius is this guy that I don't know him. He gave me all this information essentially in this Aerius report, right? He took his time, right, anonymously. That's even I'm kind of I'm taking having to take a stand, putting myself on the line, and it's what we do. We don't have an option. If and we know that spiritually speaking, the truth is the most important thing. Right. That's what it's at least even if you're wrong, right?
Well, that's why I'm never fearful about anything that I do. There's no fear there because I'm being honest in my opinion. And if you're honest in your opinion and you're wrong, so be it. That's so much better to me than being dishonest in your opinion and thinking you're right.
Right.
That's terrible.
And I've been terribly wrong sometimes. Things I thought I was right. Even when my dad was here, I said, no, that's like this and la la la. And then I went and looked and I was like, oh my goodness, what am I talking about?
It happens.
It just happens.
It happens.
But you have to learn to recognize it's very important. This is one of the things that I get from chess. It's another one of the things I love. And I watch chess like every day. It's crazy. But, and it's that you have to learn from your mistakes in order to grow and make better decisions. It's really quite an essential thing. If you get nervous about your mistakes and you get nervous because someone has challenged you, that's really a red flag that you don't know how to think through concepts and ideas and try to find an answer. Some people just let go of things. They disagree, they get nervous, and then they let go. They rage quit, whatever, they freak out. They cannot really get around to think it through. And that in my life, I found that I solve things only in that way, in catching my mistakes and recognizing it and understanding that you need to move forward by reviewing that instead of getting angry. And that really shuts you down from growth. So and I think we really don't have an option because of the misrepresentation that we being the targets. You yourself much more than I have, and you and Bob and a bunch of other people.
It looks like they, from what I can tell, they took down our YouTube stream. Interesting, huh?
Oh yeah, I see it. So,
but D Live's still up. So hello everybody in D Live. How dare it? How dare it do that to me? Anyway, I'm glad we didn't have too much more planned. That would have sucked, but it's been fun. I appreciate you coming on. Can't wait to talk to you tomorrow about some more of this stuff. Maybe we'll look into it a little bit more. If people want to support me, they can do so at Patreon. Very easy to do so. You can go to patreon.com/jeranism while you're there, /anthropology to support Rodrigo. And there's lots of other people, Globebusters there, /Globebusters, /Nur para Todos. Yeah, lots of people there you can support. /DITRH, get the Flat Earth, Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app. Again, there's lots of ways that you can support what you like, or just hit the thumbs up, like what you like, and that share it maybe across your social media. That's all I can suggest. So that's about it. If people want to mail me anything, you can do so at my P.O. Box, Jeranism, P.O. Box 3044, Merced, California, 95344. Send me a letter for 2 cents. All you got to do is check out my video on my channel, how to mail a letter in the United States for 2 cents, and it will save you 50 cents. Hey, how about that? But anyway, you can probably do that to send your friends and family letters and Christmas cards and more stuff like that. So, I don't know what's up, Bob. I see him saying bummer, dude. Yep, I don't know. We are still live on D Live, and I'm looking at my restream dashboard. It still shows the event is live with 563 viewers. Still says it's online, but for whatever reason, they took me down. All right. Oh, well. All right, guys. It's been fun. Rodrigo, final words before we go?
No, see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for having me, and awesome. I mean, you pointed out some of these. For me, it's really great to hear how people relate to some particular passages, and it makes me happy that it resonated and that it makes sense.
It did. I haven't read through the entire supplement, as I didn't know even that existed until this hour before the show. So I'll read that and check that out, and I'll probably have comments on that tomorrow, and then look forward to volume number 2. Check out the Friday Lounge tomorrow. That's at 12 noon Pacific. So check that out. We've got another full house, I'm sure. So tune in, and then we have Globebusters also at 12 noon Pacific on Sunday. So, guys, do your own research, because when you do, you'll never again believe what you've been taught. Thank you so much to Rodrigo for sharing Spacecrack Magazine. Make sure you download it today. That link will be in the description, and I will actually fix the link to make sure you can get to his YouTube video as well. And that's pretty much it. So that was Spacecrack with Rodrigo Ferrari-Nunes, PhD. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Till tomorrow at noon, take it easy. This has been Jeranism. Peace.
Cheers.